There's an article that came out today about the NYC mayoral election, talking
Mm.
about how like maybe there's maybe like these political campaigns, whether it's Mamdani or Cuomo or whoever, they're starting to really reference Polymarket and Kelshi a lot, to a
Mm.
degree where it's like it's almost funny how much they reference these prediction markets in the news, because they're like, look guys, like the authority is saying it, and it's like at
Yeah.
some point, like, are these markets being pumped by the actual actors? um so yeah, kind of a broad, very broad question, but I just like interesting. It's an interesting kind of thought on your point, I think.
Yeah. No, you're pointing to a very interesting conversation indeed. Um, um, you remember how Trump first referred to a poly market? He said something on this poly poll, or something along those lines. He didn't know how it's really called, but he tried to reference where, like, the standard polls were saying that Harris was in favor, or was like in the lead. Polymarket was the only sort of outlier, big outlier to that, saying, hey, actually, Trump has bigger chances of winning the election. So then Trump talked about it. And the, I mean, it's been for forever that politicians and media reference polls and use it as an argument. And voters also have used polls to inform themselves about who's likely to win and who's not. So in that sense, on the one hand, there's nothing new. Polymarket is just another tool that shows in some way what's likely to happen and what not, just as the traditional uh, polls tried to do. However, what is different, and you've just pointed to that, right, is that the actors in the real world out there have a unique opportunity to also influence Polymarket, because you can't influence a poll that easily. You can't change people's minds just by making quote, like there's a huge lag in people responding to a poll, I would imagine, and measuring and so on, while Polymarket gives you an instantaneous in an instant a reaction to what's happening. And therefore there's this very unusual incentive where um, you can influence the market, the prediction market. Now, however, it's a double-edged sword. For instance, when Mamdani has been speaking about prediction markets, if I'm not mistaken, I didn't listen carefully, but I think he was saying, uh, let's not focus on the prediction market odds because we have work to do. And here
Mhm.
comes the risk. If people believe that Mamdani is definitely winning, they might be less inclined and less motivated to actually go and vote. So it might be bad for Mamdani for the price to be really, really high, because he needs to motivate his base and he needs to motivate the voters to actually go, and especially the undecided voters. And sometimes the sense of urgency that Mamdani might be losing will actually be a motivating factor for people to go. So it's in a way a double-edged sword, where it's not necessarily good for Mamdani for the poly market or Kalshi be saying that he's got 90 or 95% chance of winning. Maybe 60 or 70 would be better for him because it will be easier to motivate the voters. So in that sense, it's a double-edged sword, and it has advantages and disadvantages from my perspective.